And we're continuing underneath the lip here. Same old story, getting the arc flow going. You see it's still very grid-like from the front view, so we'll pinch those in and curve them around the jawbone in a moment. For right now, I'm looking at the bottom arc of the lip, and there's a distinction of the way the skin changes when you go from the jaw and the chin area up into the actual lip. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And here we go. So continuing the curves in, and still a little bit one-dimensional or two-dimensional, looking at it from just the front and just the side views. But you bring that curve in for the chin bone. It's one of the bony protrusions, one of the main landmarks. There we go. So we're finally getting some curves going in the other direction. So it's going to curve back up over the top of the chin bone and kind of press underneath the soft tissue of the chin. And then as we go up to the chin bone here, there's actually uh, it's pretty distinct. It's one of the main profile bony protrusions you see, along with the bridge of the nose and the top of the brow. So you really want to get the chin right. And the meat that goes underneath the outside portions of the lower lip is very distinct as well. It kind of curves and joins back into. There's a lot of muscles there that you want to go. There we go. So we're finally getting rid of that grid-like shape and bringing that in, so it kind of curves together and pinches together towards the center of the above between the chin and the lower lip, and then the outer portions as well to kind of get those arcs. So those curves have to be going the right direction, right? If you got peaks and valleys, or your curves are in the wrong direction, or they're grid-like, each of those three options are incorrect. They're the signs of bad anatomy. And then as I go forward here, I can kind of decide, all right, oh, looks like I have an error that I made there, so no problem. Just deleting a face and just rebridging it is so simple to do. So when you're battling with the tool like I'm doing here, just like why is it doing that? Sometimes it's easier just to stop and delete it and then just use the bridge tool. But you can just cut it across and then go back to the vertex mode and just do the target weld again. So we'll come back to that here after a bit. So I'm just leaving it for now and discovering quite a few errors there actually. But you see those long, when you see an edge going like that in between two faces, that means that the edge in between there's actually a face collapsed down inside that edge. So you all want to be conscious of that. And you'll see me fight with it here in a minute. I'm kind of surprised as kind of a beginner's move. It happens even to, years and years and decades I've been doing this. Still, you accidentally extrude or do something to kind of mess up the face. So this is, I think there's might be some other models in the way too. So again, I should have used the display layers and done a better job. There's also some check marks and some default values in the tools that you can set incorrectly. So I just kind of got annoyed with that. I was like, all right, what's the easiest way to just delete? There you go. It's just delete one half. We talked about this earlier several times. Delete half, go in, delete the faces, reconnect it, mirror it again, and recombine and remerge the vertices. It's and if you can do MelScript or Python, you can make shelf shortcuts for this, which I'll get into later in the scripting class. But I don't want to get into that right now because we're just focusing on the simplest of techniques. You should be able to use these simple polygon. There's an n-gon poly split again. There we go. So I'm just deleting. Just get rid of it. Don't even mess with it. Just delete it and recombine, and then smooth again, check it, and you're done. And then re-bridge, grab those two faces, bridge, and then go back over here and go. So it should probably go off of that. And if you're going to use the target weld, you make sure you don't have something selected before you click target weld, because it'll remember what you had pressed on. So that should have checked that. I should have hit the 3 key and smoothed that, and just to make sure, but I'll come back to it later, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so we're getting to the final stretch of this, so now we can look at the chin, or cheek area, excuse me. And we have a lot of vertices, a lot of edges to flow, to reduce. Coming down here off the side of the lip and connecting up to the cheek. That's not going to be too much trouble. It's bringing it back around the side and reducing. That's going to cause some trouble. So there's a lot of zigzags here, a lot of peaks and valleys. So I'm kind of want to clean up. That flare for the nostril should really happen. It come up higher in the center. I'm sorry, come up higher as it goes to the outside, and it kind of curls back in. So again, check your nose, the notes on the nose, and avoiding mistakes. You can see us have a triangle right there still, so I want to curve that out and curve that up and into the middle portion of the nose where the cartilage comes underneath there, and then probably that center part, maybe push that up a little bit, kind of define, help refine those edges. So I'm just kind of pushing those all around so they kind of have a more relaxed arc flow around the bottom portion of the nostrils. And this will be, again, greatly variant. There's a lot of variance, and it'll be vary greatly from person to person depending on what kind of nose you're making. But the general flow, these once you have this base model, you should be able to turn it into just about any nose you want. And so I'm just bringing these back. The main thing is it curves back. There's a flow from it from the top down or bottom up. The arc flows back along the horseshoe, the egg shape of the face, and not too flat. You want the pan face where it looks like the face got hit. The pan is like flattened. I didn't like that 5-star there in between the eye socket, but I kind of was fighting with it a little bit, and I kind of left it for now, but I might come back to it and delete that later. So continue with the cheek. Let's do the easy parts. When you get to a tough part, you're like, oh, I'll come back to it. Extrude the edges, bring it down. That's an easy connection to make. Bring it over, target weld, snap it back over to the backside of the nasal labia, and then just continue with the bridge tool, bridge again. And when it comes wider, just when the polygon gets really wide like that, you could still bridge, but then you want to relax and distribute those edges farther from each other, so or more, or at least more equally round. Then go back up around the cheek here again, looking at the reference there, and doing the shift, drag, pull, extrude, and then switch to vertex mode. Make sure nothing is selected. Deselect by clicking an empty space, and then click on that, and then do a target weld and snap that back together again. Come around the sides here, or on the sides of the cheek. Don't want to pull them too far. Don't want the quads to get, don't want the ratio of the quads to get too close to 2-to-1 ratio, and to keep it below a 2-to-1 ratio. It shouldn't be twice as long on one side as it is to one on the other. It's the 2-to-1 ratio I try to maintain. There we go. So I'm going to finally curve that out and make some space. Should bring those over some more, which I'm going to do here momentarily. Yeah, so the kind of arcs comes up. So all of this has gotten a little messy, little spider, little messy. And so there's some housekeeping to do here. So you should catch that. I would use the relax tool as well. I would maybe go over to quad draw, hold down shift, and then just kind of drag around. And you'll see that it kind of it kind of spaces the edges out. So I'm just using turn on quad draw. It doesn't need to be snapped to a surface, right? You don't have the live surface live. You can take your model, go to switch it to quad draw, hold down shift, and smooth relax the vertices. What does it relaxes so that they're all kind of more evenly distributed. So coming back to the cheek area, right now it's indented way too much, but I'm just kind of struggling a little bit with the actual connection part, or not the hard part, but getting the basics down first. So I'll come back and kind of make the cheeks fuller later. So now I'm getting to the finish line here. So the bottom side of the cheek as it comes around, adding the edge loops that's going to go into the skull part, the helmet head of the skull, and wherever it makes obvious sense, kind of snapping those together, bringing the jawline out, looking at it from the bottom up, very much bottom up now at this point, right? Check your jawline reference. There's a definite shape you want to capture there for the jawline. You don't want to be wrong on the arc flow, like which direction the curve goes for the jaw. And I recommend having an actual human skull in front of you. A replica, of course. We order a good replica skull. So kind of pinching in that jawline we just talked about, so those curves could continue to come inward and from the top, and then curve back out towards the bottom and then upward. So the jawline angle right there, I'm looking at the silhouette of that angle, and from there it's two bulging out still. So I'm kind of getting that figured out here, and more from the bottom up again. Bring those back some more. There we go. And up and back into the throat region. There we go. Looking better. So close to the finish line. And as I'm pulling these out, I'm looking and saying, oh, do I really need that many edge loops there underneath the lip. I want them somewhat evenly distributed. I'm looking at that row of three above. I'm looking at how it's connecting across, how big some of the polygons are and how small some of the other ones are. And trying to decide, do I really need that many? As it curves back, it's changing directions. It comes around the eye. So bring that back up and I'm thinking that I want the cheek to be full and round and it needs less detail. So to get a nice, soft, smooth round, this is a more feminine form. The edges need to flow down from the eye around in a nice contour. But some of these polygons are getting a little irregular, like too long, too big, and some too jagged and shaped and sharp. And others, so I'm trying to thinking, how can I wrap these edge loops around the mouth here and still come up into the cheek area without causing any bad pucker marks, like kind of protrusions for a vertex is kind of poking out. So I'm kind of curving that underneath the outside edge of the mouth. There we go. So that's kind of flowing. You see the edge that flows underneath the lower lip and down to the jawline up around the top of the mouth again. And it's got to be careful how quickly I bring that up from the side view. It can't go too up too fast at too sharp of an angle, the jawline. And there we go. So continue those edge loops around the mouth. And I think that's going to be okay. Bring it in more still, a little bit more of a sharp turn there, making sure it relaxes on a peak in that center vertex line, the horizontal or vertical key line. We don't want that poking forward, that middle. So I'm checking my jawline reference. Off screen, I don't have it up in front of me, unfortunately, but there we go. So that's coming down, and now these can all come out a little bit more and even them down, bring that down a little more. And if it doesn't make sense, stop what I'm doing, bring that around, and use the bridge tool. And that's usually going to work pretty well. Now, I might have a diamond-shaped quad there, like in between where I just made that, so I don't like that diamond shape. So then if it gets to a long sliver quad that's more diamond shaped, like that one right there, I'm just going to delete it and continue doing the face extrusion. There we go. And solve that. So if it's a long, irregular, sharp quad, you probably want to stop, delete it, and add enough quad structure there to allow, there we go. And that brings it down around to the cheek. And it's kind of pushed in at the moment, but we can relax that. There's a long sliver one there as well, so I either get rid of it or distribute these to help hold that shape up. So this part here this is the finish line, and it is hard to make good decisions. So you'll see me change my mind as I'm going. So I'll bring it over and work. Do the easy ones first. Do the hard ones for a little bit. Come back to them. There, I still have some uncut N-gons over there, so I got the 5-sided where I cut those extra details in. But the skull kept staying a little poly, right? We're not just mindlessly running long streams of edge loops around the whole body, around the whole skull, because we're lazy. So yeah, this diamond right here, I'm not happy with how that's turned out. So I'm thinking I'm going to get rid of that quad, maybe cut that. Yeah, there you go, and cut these guys across there. So if I go back to the vertex mode and just cut through there, and then switch over to vertex mode, grab that vertex, go target, well, then grab the vertex, then bring it over. There we go. That's much better. And so that extra row of vertices going down around the side of the mouth, from the nasolabial down to the side of the cheek to the jawline. And there's that little meat, the muscle part we talked about, it kind of comes forward right there on the outside crook of the corner of the mouth. Definitely want to accentuate that. And it's still, the cheeks are still pushed in too much, but we haven't finished the cheeks and brought out the full volume of the flesh of the cheek. And bottoms up, angle again from the side view. The top down, bottom, quarter turn, 3/4 turn, and constantly checking the profile, making sure that there's some fullness there. And you have to keep checking it from all these angles to get it right. Fullness of the lower lip as well. And you're going to grab that whole edge loop there and double check in the 4 viewport. So I'm looking at it now just straight from the straight front view. Again, that photo has some barrel distortion, so it's not a perfectly flattened image of that traditional sculpture made of clay from the Furrow book. But I'm looking at the arc flow lines, where the shadow lines are. And in order to capture the light right, that means that the arc flow has to be right in all 3 dimensions. So I'm looking at it from the bottom up, top down to see where it's going to catch that light. Like, what is the actual shape? How does the indentation above the upper and inner portion of the eyelid, the upper part of the upper eyelid, that inner portion between the brow and the ridge of the nose and up into the forehead, like all those curves need to catch the light right, and that's why these photos of and working with real clay is so critical. I find that if by studying the real thing, like real form, using your hands and your fingers to fill the shape, playing with light with traditional clay sculpture gets you so much more information than digital, especially working on a flat screen. You really are going to nerf your development as a character artist, 3D modeler, if you're purely digital. So I recommend as much as possible hybridizing and looking into the materials and what it takes to work with clay, whether it's water-based clay or wax clay. Like the Furrow book is absolutely beautiful. So can't say enough about the learning curve on that series of volumes. And then pushing in the temple region and back. So you see, I went away from the cheek for a little bit. So you bounce around, and that's good sculpting technique and modeling technique. You want to kind of bounce around and then go back to it, and then work on the edge loops, and then go back to the more technical part, which is distributing the arc flow and where the edge loops actually connect to. You see it down around my chin and jawline still a little bit messy. But the edge loops are, I'm checking, okay, is that edge loop, is that the right spot for that? Am I going to get the crux? Am I going to get that corner, where the lips are pursed, right? There's a little, beautiful little curl to the lip there on the outer portion that comes upward. We called it the Irish curl for the lips. And so trying to get that where there's pursed, or the lips are kind of pressed together slightly, and where the arcs are coming down without, there you go, without the polygons intersecting each other. That's pretty hard to do. But we get it close by vertex pushing, and then when we take it in to ZBrush or Nomad or whatever your sculpting application of choice is, once you take it in there and sculpt it, it's a lot easier. You just got to kind of stay away. You kind of here we go. This little sharp right there. So maybe bringing that down just a bit. There's more space in between the nose and the upper lip on the 3D model that we have, the digital model, than the clay reference model. But I'll come back to it. Now we're looking at using the crease tool, so I'm kind of defining the edge. So grab the edges, go to crease, middle mouse drag to right to be more creased and left to be less creased, and looking from the inside. So it's easier sometimes to go inside the model. I don't have a mouth cap yet, so I'm just grabbing those edges. And there you go, middle mouse drag. So it creases the tool. So as it's smoothed, we can go off the model, hit Alt-5 on the keyboard. That gets rid of the edges. You can see it's holding the edges, and the border's a lot nicer. So you see the dark green area. That's where the dark green area, that now it's dark blue. When you click off the dark blue area is where the crease tool is in effect. And the lighter blue wire edge loop lines are just the regular wires without the crease tool being on there. So now I'm looking at grabbing, I'm continuing the edge loops up here from the brow up more into the lobe, the frontal lobe of the forehead, instead of down inside. Either way is fine. Experiment, see what works better. So this is not an absolute by any means. I think I can, having that Ngon poly split there off the center line gives me a little bit more space to create that bony protrusion where the muscles are in that. If you pinch the middle of your brow, you can get a good chunk of flesh there. That's a lot of muscle and skin in there, and I can get it to protrude out. So if I'm smoothing it now, I don't have a good lighting setup to see the shadows yet, but I'll do that in the sculpting application. So getting closer, at about 10, 15 minutes, I think, to go. So I'm just checking my edge flow, top down again, So fairly angular. I'll go in and soften all the edges here in a minute. So don't worry. You know, you softening the edges or setting all the edges under a mesh display in the pull down. You can set all the edges to face all the faces. You can set them to be faceted and then go back and just soften the edges. So I just haven't done it yet because I've been extruding a lot. Because I know every time I extrude an edge or a face, it's going to be faceted. So looking at this 5 tri-star here in the corner again, where it comes around the side, that's a good spot. It's a 5-star if it goes around a protrusion of a 3D form, and it's a 3-star if it cups outward instead of in. It's like in the corner of the eye where the edge comes out. You might have a 3-star edge intersection. And now I'm looking at a little bit more at where these edge loops flow into the skull cap. So you see, I haven't really touched the skull other than the very beginning. We added in a few edge loops, and now we're looking at it in the context of, pushing. You want to match the skull edge loops and flow to the face, not vice versa. Don't make a messy face edge loops to match your skull. Is the way more important. So, but now I'm going back here. I have my skull reference in front of me. The neck is way too thick from the side view. The skull shape is really way off from the early helmet head. So, but now we're getting precise. Right now we want good anatomy. So I'm using the rotate tool as well from the side turn and kind of shaping that. I should do a drawing of this from the side view to add to the image plane. But for now, this is okay. A little bit more work on the skull, so bringing that out. And don't have the skull reference live in the viewport, but there we go. So we'll go down, make sure that you guys can see some of these other areas. So just double checking the profile again. Again, focus on the face. Far more important than how the eyelid kind of protrudes out, how it's set in deeper, so we could really deepen that crease above the eyelid. So right in here. So I stopped on the skull, right? I found myself, okay, let's finish the face up. I just kind of found some obvious stuff. There we go. So you want to deepen that fold. Again, this depends on the genetics, the phenotype and the ethnicity and different mix that you may have for the eyelids. But in general, if you want to have an eyelid, most people have somewhat of an eyelid. So the depth of it, how deep it's set in the eye socket is up to your reference and your design that you want to do. So I'm kind of strengthening that fold. There's a lot of filler. It's full. The eyelid should be quite thick. Goes around the lens of the eye. And you don't want to have super thin eyelids. They should be fairly thick. The tear duct takes up a lot of space. You see my tear duct's still a little triangle. And there it should be a 4-sided shape. So there's 2 triangles next to each other. So if I just cut across there, the 2 triangles will become quads. So if I smooth it, that'll get fixed. But there's still a gap there. So I'm going to go around the lower part of the eyelid as well now and maybe bring that down and cup that in to show that it's actually framing and holding that eyeball inside the eye socket with a lot of flesh and muscle and tissue that goes along with it. Getting the corner. That corner intersection of the upper and lower eyelid, I find that it curves up with the cheekbone. I find that to be one of the hardest parts, just like the corner of the mouth, like curving that back and around. So I'm playing with these edge loops, and that's why I stopped on the skull. I want to make sure these edge loops for the cheek that come across from the eye curve upward here and go back into the head correctly, and then go back and push the vertices for the skull a bit more later. And as I space these out, that'll help close up the cheek, right? So I'm kind of you bounce around a lot. You go push, get the obvious ones, push the vertices to space them out more, make the quads as even as you can, and then you go back to the troubled area. Where it's like, I'm having a hard time with this intersection. I'm having a hard time adding the detail in here or reducing. It's usually the reduction of the detail that's harder, right? So there we go. So now these pieces here, I can kind of get that jawline more accurate. I can get the sternocleidomastoids. It's the mastoid muscles are the muscles that come around the base of the skull, around the front and side of the neck. And there I still got that little triangle there. And now these are becoming a little more obvious that I'm going to need to probably cut an edge loop there underneath the jawline as I pull these back around the cheek and with these big quads in the cheek area. Not too thrilled with how they're lining up for now, but I might just leave them there and let that smooth around for now and see if I want to cut that edge. So I'm kind of making a decision here. Do I cut that underneath again, underneath the jawline, or do I cut it back from the jaw back into the skull? So I made the decision there. Yes, the jaw, lower jaw underneath the chin, underneath the jawline does need that extra edge loop there. And then we can redistribute that and push those around. Probably relax them later. There we go. That's better. And then we just got to remember to cut that underneath the jaw, and we can push those all back down into the throat region. You see, it's very facet, very zigzaggy, right? So that's okay. We'll smooth out, we'll relax, and we'll sculpt those into the shape we want a bit later. So into the final spot. It's the last opening, right? We have everything closed up. So I go back up in here. Again, didn't like the way that that was distributed. There was a long sliver quad up there. That was definitely not something I was happy with. So just those last final decisions as it curved down and around. Maybe not. Maybe bring those back further and trying to work with what I have before I delete or try to work with what I have before I add more detail in there. So I'm kind of at that final decision here at the cheek. So all these edges here, I just say, screw it. I just delete them all. There we go. That is really important, you guys. So right here, if I just pause for a moment, I just stop what I did. I'm at the finish line. Okay, I know I'm going to have some weird intersections there. Just get rid of them and the face still remains. So keep the face there, let that go, and you can always come back to it, right? So yeah, this is the payoff at the end. Now, isn't it? It's a lot clearer. I can see. I can check my reference again. Like, where am I going with this again? Can I reduce some detail? Do I need to make this flow better? Like, relax all the arcs for all the bordering pieces. But that's obvious right there around the bottom of the jaw. It's a little tight around there. There's the big open area. And let's see if this just kind of falls into place. Looking at how the arc should flow based on the shadows of the reference. Curving it some more, curving it some more. So leave it, fix all your curves, smooth everything out, relax all the edges first, then do your final cuts. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm relaxing and making sure that I'm following the anatomy, I'm following the shadow, the light's hitting it right. That's all. There we go. No peaks and valleys, right? All of the edge loops should have a long flowing arc. I've said it 20, 30 times during these last set of it. There it goes. It curves around the nose. Very nice. It curves around the eye. Very nice. There's the little mask that curves around the eyes, connects the top of the brow of the nose, of the arch of the nose, bridge of the nose. The temple curves in really nice as it goes around the eye socket. Go. Here we go.